I'm Daniel Friend. I'm moderating this panel. This is Local and Loving It, unless I'm in the wrong room. Anyway, I'm a freelance editor. I am local, and my goal today is to make sure that they are talking way more than I am. So let's start right here and go down and just introduce yourselves and tell us especially where you are locally and how long you've been here.
Okay, awesome. So my name is Cindy Grigg. I write steampunk, and I write fairly unusual steampunk. So it's Norse mythology mixed with steampunk, but it's also in the Regency era, which is okay, because if you're a steampunker, you know it's usually Victorian, right? But Industrial Revolution happened in the 1700s, so it's actually, you're starting to see more Regency, and I'm so excited about it, which is really cool. So my titles are always really long. Peacock Levine and the Ethereal Fates of Naught. So this is the first book, and I have cards, so you can get the first one for free. And so I've lived in Salt Lake most of my life. I've lived other places, but yeah, I live just right here in Salt Lake City.
My name is Cheree Alsop. I am originally from Delta, Utah. Grew up on a farm out there, and yes. Now I live in Orem. I've been here about 6 years after living in Texas. I'm a hybrid author, and so I have a traditional publisher, but I love self-publishing. I brought a couple of my books. You might have seen this on the front of the schedule. There's a giveaway for it. And then my Dr. Wolf series is the popular one right now. It's about an ER doctor who's a werewolf. So
I'm Holli Anderson, and I have lived in Grantsville, Utah, most of my life. Out by Tooele. It's a small town. Still live there. I'm the author of the 5 series. It's a trilogy. I published at Curiosity Quills Press. It's young adult urban fantasy. I actually have a romantic thriller coming out early next year, which is way off topic for me. I don't even read romance, but I wrote it for my sisters because they don't like magic. So anyway, they love it. So hopefully it'll be good. Yeah.
I'm Keary Taylor. I grew up here in Utah for the last 9 years. My husband and I have been up in Washington State though, and now we live here during the school year and we go up to Washington for the summer. So I'm local some of the time, but grew up here. So I write mostly paranormal romance. It's my most popular stuff. I've got my House of Royals saga and the Fall of Angels trilogies, my most popular, but I also have written adult contemporary, young adult contemporary, and sci-fi romance. So I have about 20 titles out right now. So, and all of my stuff is self-published except for a few foreign stuff with Amazon. But yeah, that's me.
Okay, the title of this panel is Local and Loving It. So the question then is, what do you love about being local? What is the best thing about living right here?
Well, I'll
Don't everyone talk at once.
So this is a separate series I'm about to talk about, but I'm writing a serial, and it is actually about Saltaire. So it's a local site, and it was much different. Yeah, local resort. It was much different than what we have now. So a lot of you probably know that in the time period that I'm going to write about it. So I love living in Utah and writing because I have access to the archives, the different museums, and I can see some of the hands-on stuff that I couldn't find online. So you can always travel somewhere to write about it, but this has ended up being like a huge project I started like 4 years ago. So it's been a lot of, it's been nice to be on site. So also, we have so many awesome cons in the Valley. I've met so many people this year at LTUE who have traveled from like California and surrounding areas. So we're really lucky. And I never knew about all these until like, I don't know, 3-4 years ago. And I've just been so excited to be involved. And yeah, I had no idea how lucky I was to live around so much activity until talking to some of these people that travel in, and yeah, I thought it was just normal. It's not. I think we're really lucky.
Somebody yesterday had said something about, if you want to be an actor, you go to LA. If you want to be a Broadway actor, you go to New York. If you want to be a sci-fi fantasy writer, you go to Utah. I know, because we have just such amazing authors that come from our little state. Best-selling movie deals, amazing authors. And they come to these things. You know, James Dashner was in the vendor room yesterday morning, and it's just, you know, I've talked to Brandon Sanderson a million times at LTUE and LDS Storymakers, and it's just cool that we in Utah get to talk to and hang out with amazing authors all the time, and they help us, and they're encouraging and answer questions, and we're very lucky in Utah, and we have the best. I've been to writing conventions in other states, and they don't compare to what we have here.
And everyone's so relatable here. I feel that way.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because it's a more low-key venue. Like, what if this was in LA? I don't know if there'd just be a different vibe, but I love it. Sorry.
I like the readership here.
Yeah.
Well, also partly because like I've written a lot of romance stuff, and having grown up in Utah, I don't write the regular kind of romance you usually find in the top 100 on Amazon. So I kind of like that my type of romance is the people that live in Utah here. So my readership is very much Utah type people. So that's pretty fantastic, having people who get my type of romance.
Yeah, I agree with the support here. When I lived out in Texas, there was one writers group in Dallas, and it was 200 people. And you never knew who was going to come and who was going to go. You might have 2 people one day, you might have 200 people the next day. And here it's very consistent. It's like the writer community, everyone's so supportive, and everyone wants each other to succeed, which is rare in anything other than writing. And so it's really neat to be a member of the community, and just that's why we're here, is to help everybody else get up here too. And so it's just great to be here.
So you mentioned that, wow, you can just talk to Brandon Sanderson or run into people who are famous in the dealer's room. What's your favorite just encounter with somebody, like you can fangirl out for a moment?
Mine was the first time I met Brandon Sanderson, and that was actually at LDS Storymakers. I wasn't published. I hadn't finished writing anything yet, and I went early to his panel, sat in the front row. This was before Stormlight Archives. This was probably right in the Mistborn era. And then afterwards, I jumped up. I'm an introvert. I don't talk to people. I don't approach people. I approached him, and then I couldn't speak. I just went, let me start over. I said, can I just get my picture with you? That's all I said. I think I said, you're my favorite author. Can I get my picture with you? And he was so kind. And so he didn't look at me like I was a freak. I've talked to him several times since then and done a little bit better each time. But I think that was probably my favorite. It was awesome.
Others? That's one.
I don't encounter people. I can't talk to people. I'm too much of an introvert. There's a button on my backpack that says I'm an introvert. Don't talk to me.
All right, let me switch it around then. Has anybody ever come up to you and be like, oh wow, you're this author, I love your books?
I had one last night that surprised me. She came up to the book signing and she goes, didn't you write Heart of the Wolf? And it's one of the books I put out like a couple of years ago and kind of, left it out in the void, and there's been all these series since then, and nobody's ever mentioned it, even though it was one of my heart projects, and I love that book. And she just started gushing about it, and I'm like, I've never talked to anyone about this book, so it was kind of a neat moment to be able to talk to her about one of my favorite books, so.
Absolutely. And yesterday I had a young girl, maybe 13, that totally fangirled when she saw me. And I was like, oh, I love you, can I give you a hug? But she had borrowed the books from a friend, so she didn't have her own set. I'm assuming it was her older sister, bought her all 3 of my books signed, and she just was in heaven, and that made me be in heaven because that was really awesome.
So does it sometimes feel when you have those things like you've made it, like I'm a real author now?
I think it just validates that this is why I do this, because I love to read and I love to see, especially young people.
And I get it more for my nonfiction.
Mm-hmm.
I've written like a book about dictation and how it's really helped me write faster and stuff. And so people will come up to me and say, oh, that helped me so much. And, I loved this and this tip, which is awesome. I did have these 2 little girls come up to me once, and they were gushing because they wrote Norse mythology. And we just talked for like an hour. It was super cool. So yeah, super validating when that happens. Yeah.
It's kind of funny. I have a 9-year-old daughter, and she always goes, "Mom, you're famous. Why don't people come up to you all the time?" And I'm like, "Well, people might recognize my books, but not my face."
So do you like that anonymity?
Yes.
I would rather not be recognized.
Yeah.
I think as authors we don't expect it,
Right.
you know, because you're just putting words out there, and it's like there's that barrier,
Mm-hmm.
and so when it does happen and you start talking to each other or people on a personal level, it's fun because it is unexpected.
It's mostly just fun for me because then I know, okay, we have this common language, like we can talk about this topic that I've been nerding out about, you know? And so, yeah, that's more what it's about.
Yeah.
So you've all written multiple books. How much work did it take to get to that point? Like, what did you do to get to where you are now right here at this table?
These are good questions.
For me, it's mostly time, I guess. I mean, I started self-publishing in 2010, so I've been doing it for 7 years now. So, and just creating a schedule that works for you. Like my schedule, I have it all very laid out. I know exactly how long it'll take me to write a first draft, exactly how long it takes to edit, and it's just finding a schedule that very much works for you and kind of sticking to it. So, but yeah, mostly time.
I have no schedule. It's not a good thing because I don't get stuff done as quickly as I should. But yeah, I do a lot of, well, up until 2 weeks ago, I've been a sports mom for the last 20 years. But my last child is a senior, did his last wrestling tournament last week. But I have done a lot of writing at wrestling tournaments because they're boring. And, you know, you're waiting for your kid to wrestle, and I don't want to watch everybody else's kids wrestle. So I've
That's some excitement.
Exactly. 6 minutes. 6 minutes. If they go the whole way. But so yeah, I need to now that I have more me time, I need to develop a system. But I didn't even start writing until about 9 years ago, maybe not even 9 years ago, 8 or 9 years ago. And so, you know, it's just been kind of fitted in between the full-time job and the kids, and so yeah, I think that's a good idea.
It works. Yeah, on time it's hard. I have twin boys that are 7, and I have a daughter that's 14. And so I have learned to write with interruptions, and now I write really well with interruptions. And I tell myself that now that they're in school, I don't write as well because they aren't interrupting me all the time. It's weird, and so I have to interrupt myself. And but yeah, you just learn to write in the lifestyle that you're at, you know. And with them, I've gone through a few little laptops through disasters with sippy cups and things like that, and had to replace them. So I write with really cheap laptops. If they get on the internet, they crash. So it kind of keeps me motivated to stay on my Word document and writing. But I self-published in 2011, and then I got a traditional publisher, and I've published 40 books since then, so it keeps me busy.
Yeah.
So in a productivity contest with you versus Brandon.
You can hold your own.
Wow. This can get interesting.
I started writing because I was in an accident. So I was in a car accident, and it hurt my back, and so it was really more of that, like, face to face with like your mortality, right? And so I was like, why don't I do what I love? Like, why don't I? Why am I having these desk jobs? And like, why? So, so I started writing, but it was hard for me to physically to write. Like, it hurt my back actually to even, And so then I got into dictation, which it's a tricky thing to get into, but it totally has made it so that I can stick with it because you speak faster than you type usually. And so, but also, I physically couldn't stick with it if I couldn't. So once I found like my track to run on, it just was like an alignment of, wow, like I'm finally motivated to do whatever it takes. And then, it really opened up for me. So sometimes I think you have to get to that point, right? I'm sure you guys have experienced that on some level where you're just like, it wasn't working before, but now I just have like this gravity that I can make those sacrifices, or I can, do what it takes. So. Yeah.
So there's a question here in the seed questions about getting feedback on books, and that's such a broadly worded question. I thought maybe we could spend a couple of minutes looking at different sides of that. So, when it comes to feedback, what do you find you mostly find when people come up and talk to you about books that you've written? Is it mostly just, oh, I love the book? Do you ever get more constructive feedback from random people, or negative feedback? Like, what do people talk about when they come up to you?
You know, feedback is funny. My husband's a chiropractor, and on Tuesdays we go down to Moroni, and I'm the secretary at his clinic. And so there's always patients coming in and out, and we always end up talking about jobs and things. And when I tell them I write about werewolves, you get the weirdest reactions. And they're like, what's wrong with you don't you have a better use of your time? And, yeah, you know, and I just laugh it off. I use it as motivation for myself. And I remember, you know, you get all of the positive feedback and positive reviews online, and then you get that one negative one. And you just learn to roll with it. But I remember the very first one, I was a little, you know, I was like, oh, that's a little harsh, because it was harsh. It was like, she can't write, da-da-da-da-da. And my husband got super mad. He's like, we need to write them, and we need to tell them to take that down. I'm like, no. They say you're not supposed to do that. And since then, you know, you just roll with it. You kind of laugh it off. I had somebody review this one and give it 1 star, and they're like, it's not military sci-fi action. And I'm like, well, I know. That's not what I wrote. It's space opera, so I'm okay with your negative reviews. But yeah, so you just learn to roll with it, and then you take the constructive criticism and learn, so.
Yeah, nobody's ever really face-to-face told me something bad.
People are nice in general.
For the most part, right. Other than the guy at King's English that was like, well, I don't read things like that. I read real stuff. Good for you. Come on. I'm sorry that your life is so hard. No, but there was one review on Goodreads that was harsh. It was very harsh, and it was my first book. But I actually did really learn from it. And then she reviewed my second book and the first thing she said was this the same author as the first book?
That's cool.
Yeah, and so I wanted to contact her and just say thank you, because her criticisms were,
It can help.
yeah, it did help.
Yeah.
What she said helped me to improve the next 2 or 3 books that I wrote. And I remember that every time I'm writing and I go to do what I did that she didn't like, I remember, oh, don't do that. People don't like that. Readers don't like that. And so it's helpful. I don't even really look at reviews anymore. I'm just, because at first I was like every single day I was looking at Goodreads and Amazon, and I don't do that anymore.
Yeah. I would agree with what she said, though. I mean, a lot of people will say don't go and read all your reviews, and at times that's definitely helpful, but I would say I've probably read 80% of the reviews anyone's ever read on my book, because I do learn a lot from the reviews. I want to know what I'm doing wrong and what people aren't liking about it. So I do go and I read quite a few of them, especially in like the series that I'm currently working on, like my House of Royal series. You know, there's going to be probably 14 books in this, and I'm on book number 7 right now. And so I kind of like knowing as I'm going along what people are liking and what they aren't. And that way I'm kind of learning, and I can kind of shift stuff, and obviously keeping it as my story in the way I want it to be. But I do think it's actually kind of helpful as long as you can have really thick skin. That's one of my biggest pieces of advice that I give people starting out is don't take everything personally and grow some thick skin, because it can definitely tear you down, and people will be mean and brutal and say really personal, horrible things sometimes. And I've had several friends that they wrote one book, got a couple of bad reviews, and they just couldn't take it, so they quit after that. And it's so sad, because that's not all the time, but you kind of have to be able to deal with it, because behind the curtain of the internet, people can say anything they want.
They're very cold.
Yeah, reviews are so interesting. I have not cracked the reviews puzzle, so I'm a little probably newer than these awesome authors, but I still pay my rent. So I have hardly any reviews on Amazon, but I still pay my rent with the money, which is pretty awesome. So you don't, once I heard that like you'll get 1 review for every 1,000 people that buys your book, there's some kind of ratio there, but I did get 1 bad review once, and it was for my nonfiction book, and they said something that was just like inaccurate. So I actually did write back. I wrote in the comment, because you can reply to the reviews, and I said, you've said that the links are outdated, but they were updated last month. So I just full on said that. And then I actually messaged Amazon and I said, hey, I feel like this is pretty much slanderous. Like other than that, I have, 5-star reviews. I mean, I only have 10, but they're 5 stars, you know what I mean? And so, so they took it down, which is pretty awesome.
Wow.
And then I found out it was actually someone who pretty much wrote my same book, like copied it. It was, they had posted on theirs, like it was obvious they were a friend, and that person was booted. So I think, maybe not. And I don't know, like that's all hearsay. I don't know if it was their friend, I don't know. But it was suspicious and it was weird. And they had said in their review, check out this book instead. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think you can be a little bit protective of what you write, but never like retaliate, like, how dare you say
As much as you want to.
awesome. You know what I mean?
And don't let your husband do it or your cousin.
Right. Yeah, in your honor. Right.
Yeah, it's not honorable.
So yeah, reviews. Okay. I'm trying to learn the equation to get more reviews because I haven't sought them out. I haven't done anything. But you can still make money even if you don't have them. So it's easier if you have them. It's a good thing to have.
Interesting. Now, one of the things I found to be useful about living in Utah is that it's very easy to find or create a writing group, and I've benefited from that in my own writing. Are you guys part of a writing group? How has being local helped that? If you are, talk a little bit about writing groups and what the local scene does for that.
I was in an awesome writing group, and then there came a point where I just parted amicably because I just had so much I wanted to do. But I met them at, I don't know, does UVU still do the Book Academy? I think they stopped. Oh, they do it once in a while.
Maybe every couple of years even. I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, a friend of mine, we met because we both had made comments like in a situation like this, and we both realized we were on the same page, and so he started a group that was just so awesome. It was just a bunch of people throughout Utah, and sometimes we met online, like just sharing Google Docs, but sometimes, because even if you're local, there could be people like, a couple hours away. So, but then we met locally, and I loved it, so it was pretty cool that way. Yeah, I think it's a great thing to do, and you do have to be a little bit, like looking for the right fit, right? Mm-hmm. So I thought everybody there was a good fit, but there just came a point where I needed to just really focus on some other stuff, but I thought it was great.
I have a writing group story, as authors do. So in Texas, I'd never been to a writing group, and I had a friend who found out I was writing, and I hadn't published or sent anything out and things, and he's like, hey, you should come to this writing group, and it was the one with 200 people. So I get there, and they divide everyone up into groups of 10, and you sit around these big tables, and everyone reads about 3 or 4 pages of what they write, and they get a critique from everybody, and then you go to the next person. And so I sit down, the very, very first story, and it's in the middle, it must have been like 6 or 7 chapters in, and it was a very X-rated sex scene, and the girl that was reading it, she was very descriptive and very into the story, and everyone's just listening, and I was like, oh, this is new, so I just listened to it, and it was really interesting, but it was neat to see everybody just be unbiased and be able to give really good, insight into what she read. And, there was the next guy read a Western and the next guy was fantasy. And so many different types of writing, but it was neat to see that everybody's input was helpful, no matter what genre they were writing and no matter what, point of view they usually write in and things. And so to me, it taught me the value of a writer's group, and I stuck with them for the 5 years we were out there. And I learned a great deal, and I feel like it really helped my writing. Since having the twins and being home and my daughter's schedule, I haven't gotten back into one. But I am part of some online Facebook support groups and stuff, and we all help each other with advertising and new book ideas and book covers and things. So I feel like it's important to create that team behind you, because it's easy for people that are in your life immediately to say, yeah, she writes, and they don't understand quite how important it is to you or quite where you believe it can go. And when you show them, then that's a really neat thing and a really neat feeling to be like, oh, she did take it somewhere. She can, support the family doing this and things. So,
I started out with the League of Utah Writers Tooele chapter, where we just met at somebody's house, and there were maybe 4 of us that showed up at a time. Now we're meeting, and I don't go as often as I used to because of life, but we're meeting in the library, and it's just grown bigger and bigger. And from that group, I joined my critique group, which is a smaller group of us that critique each other's work, and they've been very, very helpful with my writing, and we mesh really well together. But also, that's where I found out about my publisher, because somebody at the group had queried curiosity quills. And they've been rejected, but they were very nice about it, she said. And so I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll just query them. And that's how I got my publisher. So there's just networking too that happens there that you don't get other places.
I don't actively go in person to any writers groups and haven't for a while. I used to go to one once upon a time in Washington, but I was like the youngest one there by like at least 20 years. So it was a little awkward, but most of what I do these days is online Facebook groups. I mean, it's kind of fantastic because I'm part of like several like very successful author groups, and you know, they're always talking about the different things because everything's constantly changing in the way you market and everything. But mostly it's all online stuff. I mean, my kind of tribe is, I mean, I've never even met most of them. You know, some of my closest friends and who I consult with constantly, they're all around the world. Like, my best friend I talk to all the time about stuff with writing. She lives in Australia. We did actually meet once in person though. But yeah, I think online, you get such a big community and people with different experiences and whatnot. So I think finding those different Facebook groups, and I'm sure there's other websites too that have great ones, but that's been, for me, one of my best experiences is the different ones on there, so.
One last question before we open it up to questions from the audience. What are some things to watch out for when you're living in Utah? What's the downside of living around here? Or if you need to, what's the worst thing about being local?
I think for me, you know, I've written all my books so that my daughter, she was 13 at the time when I was writing my werewolf books, and I wanted them to be clean enough that she could read them, you know, and not be too crazy and out there. But they are violent, and I think sometimes I get some blowback from that, is the violent side of it. But I feel like, you know, I respond to that by saying all you have to do is turn on the news, and it's a very violent world that we live in. And for me, writing is my way of myself coping with it and also helping my readers cope with it. Because if you see how a main character can get through things like that and survive and come out stronger, then it can help them. And so, yeah, it's just a matter of explaining your point of view and not feeling like you have to justify everything you write to the people around you.
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree with that. And I mean, I said at the beginning, the readers here are the best part of being here in Utah, but it can also kind of be the opposite way.
Right.
I get scared telling people in Utah here that I write romance because, like I said earlier, there are certain expectations for romance, and so people sometimes will assume I write, you know, really X-rated romance sometimes, and that's not the case. So, yeah, people can kind of have weird expectations of different genres in writing here in Utah. So, like I said, it's kind of the best and the worst thing about it. But other than that, I can't really say there's any like real downfalls or bad sides to being here in Utah. So
yeah, and I've been chastised for using magic in my books. Not in Utah though. It was in California, so it's everywhere. There are people everywhere who have a certain idea about, you know, magic or violence or what have you. So you're going to come across that everywhere. Maybe a little bit more here, but it's kind of everywhere. Yeah.
The only negative I can think of is that Amazon now charges us tax, right? or no, the state of Utah now charges tax if you sell through Amazon. Is that everywhere though? Is that just Utah?
That if it's not everywhere, it's going to be everywhere.
It's going to be
Because
soon. So yeah.
there's no reason that states are going to want to give that up with more and more commerce moving online. They're not going to let that happen. And if it was sold through a bookstore, the state would take its tax too. So.
Yeah, true. That's all I got. It's a pretty awesome place.
Well, now we know. Well, we've got some time left, and since there are about as many of you as there are of us, you each get the chance to ask a question, maybe even more than one. So, what would you like to know? Yes?
What are all the different marketing techniques that you use? I know a lot of you are self-published. Does that differ? Like blog tours or book signings? Where do you get your most bang for the buck?
Right now, I'm at a phase where I need to step up. So when it comes to marketing, but so far I've done blogging. I was really faithful. I think you can go a long way with that. But there just comes a point where, and so I developed 2 blogs. So I have my fiction author site, and then I have one called The Productive Author. So it was like nonfiction, stuff I wanted to give back to other authors and stuff. So, and I was really faithful with like, hey, I'm gonna, post this on social media and stuff. And then I just kind of realized, well, I actually need to do some other stuff. And so in my next phase, I plan on doing a lot more with, launching correctly and having like ARC reviewers and having all of that in place. So these guys probably have a lot more to say, but that's what I've done. And I have been able to get to a point where I pay my rent, a big part of my bills. So, and I write full time, so I write nonfiction. So I'm a technical writer and I do project work. And I think that's helped me, because I talk to different people and I can bring up my work and stuff. So learning how to like mention your work, like I mentioned dictation earlier. I mention that all the time and I hope it's not irritating to people. I'm just trying to help people. So I guess like one-on-one marketing, blog marketing, and this is just where I've started. So I hope that helps.
And that's something, that it changes so fast. And that's what, when I first started, and probably when you first started, you didn't pay to advertise. There were so many ways to advertise that were free out there. And they told you if you were paying to advertise, then you're doing it wrong. And so now it's the opposite. If you're not paying to advertise, you're not getting your book out there. And there's so many different methods. Facebook ads used to be one of my highest ways to get my books out there. Now they've dropped. They're changing the way they're marketing. You have to pay a lot more to get in front of the same number of people. I found that AMS, the Amazon Marketing Services, their ads are really helping me. And there's some good Facebook pages on how to use them effectively and how to use your keywords. And I think you can put, 1,000 keywords or something. And there's a way to link author names so that if somebody searches for an author name and you have the highest bid on that keyword, then it will also link to your name. And so it pulls you up along with them and it just helps get you under more eyes, which is our whole goal. What else? Book bloggers are my favorite people in the whole world. I don't blog, but I'm so grateful for book bloggers. Whenever I do a book release, I have a whole list of bloggers I send it to, and they're all so kind to put it out, and I give them free books to give away, and so they get readers back, and so it just works. But it's a matter of keeping current, and there's a lot of Facebook pages you can follow about all the new things. BookBub is great, but it's almost impossible to get into now. But there's new ones that are coming into Insta Freebie and some others.
How'd you amass your list of book bloggers? Were you just Google them, or you?
It's taken a while. When I first released, when I first self-published, I published 4 books at the same time, which I wouldn't recommend doing. It was a lot. But I'm like, hey, I have these 4 books I've been trying to get out. I'm just going to self-publish them all. And it was great. It was a lot of work. But I knew I didn't have a name out there at all because I hadn't blogged. I don't have any nonfiction stuff. And so I wrote to all these book bloggers, probably 1,000 of them. And I said, and I was personal, which is very important with bloggers. You don't want to send these mass letters. And I said, I am a brand new self-published author. These are the books I'm just getting out this weekend, and I really need help getting them out there. Could you help me? And I think the first set, about 100 wrote me back, and they were very kind. A few said I don't do self-published authors. But the ones that did say they would promote me have been great. And the last 6 years, they've helped me put out any book that I release, they do a blog about. And now I use Smashwords to do coupon codes so I can give them free ebooks to do giveaways, and that's helping us both. But it's a great way, just search for, young adult fantasy or werewolf bloggers and things like that, and it'll give you a very personal list, and then you just write them all. It takes time, but it's
How did you find them?
What's that?
How did you find them?
I ran a Google search. I just said book bloggers, fantasy or young adult or werewolf or vampires, anything I was writing at the time. When I did this sci-fi series, I'd never written space opera before, and all of my book bloggers were young adult fantasy, so they couldn't blog about it. They didn't have the same audience, and so I had to find a whole new set, and it actually worked even better the second time with this new group, so yeah.
And if you're short on time and lazy like I am, you use something like Espresso Book Tours, or which is what I've done. Yeah, Espresso is awesome. They've done a great job for me. Basically, you pay them to go find you the bloggers, and they have sign-up sheets. The lady that runs that is very organized, and she will find me like 100 bloggers to do a book launch thing. They do interviews with you, and so that's kind of how I do that, and I get a lot of readership from that, a lot of sales from that. I'm not good at marketing. My husband does most of my marketing for me, and my publisher. They have newsletters and they run sales, and that's when I get the biggest is when my publisher will do a 99-cent sale and then send it out everywhere. And they have a huge Facebook following of like over 60,000. So they have a huge reach.
It was Express book
Espresso. So it's just X and then Espresso.
Okay.
Have you guys, there's a similar thing, I hope I'm not jumping. Author Marketing Club. That's something I've considered. I don't use it, but a lot of authors that I know, they use it, and so what they do, it's a little different. They find Amazon reviewers. I don't know if it's other platforms as well. I know it's Amazon, but they put you in connection. So you still need to send that email. They're not like just giving you reviews, but yeah. So Author Marketing Club.
And then Espresso also I get a lot of reviews from doing that as well. Because the book bloggers, that's what they want. They want to read your stuff and blog about it, and then they all know that reviews are important. And so they'll review on Amazon and they'll review on Goodreads. And so,
that's good to know.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Cool.
I used to say you'd have to reevaluate how you were marketing everything once every 6 months. Now I say you have to do it every 2 weeks, and I'm not kidding about that. Like, I am constantly reevaluating how I'm marketing, what particular book, what price point it's at. Like, I spend as much time writing as I do on the marketing of everything these days. I mean, I call it full-time because it earns a full-time living, but, it's just when my kids are at school. But I spend half and half about, between writing and marketing. And it's interesting hearing them talking about book bloggers so much, because for me, that's kind of, I don't know, they kind of ran their course and they haven't been as effective anymore. But for me, what most of my stuff comes from is the paid book ads. BookBub was mentioned, and BookBub is magic. Like, that's when I finally hit the USA Today bestseller, because I had a BookBub ad going and a sale that was going with that. And I'm constantly rotating through different books, doing different sales. And so I actually have an assistant who works for me, and that's half of what her job is she goes, I give her a certain budget, say we're going to run a 99-cent sale on this book. I need you to go and book a bunch of ads for it. And I just put some money in a PayPal for her, and she goes and she books these different ads for me. And there's probably about 10 different sites or so that we use that she just cycles through and books all these ads through. So that, for me, that's been the biggest one. And recently, again, Facebook ads were mentioned, and for me, that's actually been really good lately. But you have to be really careful with Facebook ads, because they can gobble up a lot of money, and they can sometimes not get a very good conversion rate and return on your investment. And so it's kind of something you have to really fine tune and really learn how to work. But for me, it's done really well. It's kept, my one series, it's kept it in the top 100 niche genre for a couple of months now, and it's, I'm not having to constantly do sales on it. It's just been a consistent thing because those ads are running every single day. So, I probably spend $50 to $100 every day advertising my books. And so you can spend a lot of money. I know a lot of other authors who spend $10,000 a month on advertising. I'm not kidding about that. So yeah, it's easy to gobble it up, but if you can figure it out just right, it does have a good return on it. So for me, it's been the paid ads and Facebook these days. And then also launching, I have an ARC team, advanced reader copy team. We've probably got about 40 reviewers on it. So my assistant, about a week and a half before I launch a book, she'll email it out, a free copy to these people. They have about a week and a half to read it, and then they're required to post their reviews on Amazon and Goodreads. And so I think launching with a bunch of reviews definitely seems to help with your sales right off the bat, because people are, seeing the reviews. I think Amazon's algorithms even work better with a bunch of reviews on your book already. So I think launching, if you can, with reviews is extremely helpful. So.
I say they now say you want to pay an average of 10% that year into what you want to make, and that's kind of a good way to know if you're paying the right amount for your advertising. Newsletters are becoming so much more popular.
Your email list.
Your email list, using Insta Freebie to help build up that email list. I use Bookchamp. What do you guys use for your newsletters?
I use MailChimp for mine.
Oh, I mean MailChimp.
A lot of people are migrating away from MailChimp, but it works fine for me. So
yeah, me too. And I use BookFunnel, but Insta Freebie is good too.
Yeah, and building your mailing list is something I should be spending more time on, and it's extremely important, but it's also kind of your biggest, in a way, free way to advertise, because they're already there and it's going to get straight to them. It might cost you to build your email list, but it's extremely important.
Yeah, so that's a good thing.
A lot of people will give away free books in order for people to sign up for your newsletter. So,
and then this probably goes without saying, but also just having a quality product. that's been a learning curve for me too, but I've had better paychecks every time I make a better book. So it's like very noticeable. So there you go.
Okay. Yes.
Is it taboo for a self-published author to approach the bookstores and ask if they can put your book, like not like Barnes and Noble, but like a mom and pop bookstore type of place?
It depends. They like to do book signings. Mom and pop stores, they love book signings. And if you bring some books, there's, the chance that they'll let you stock some in their shelves. And so as long as you find a way to help each other out, they're more than happy to have your books in their store, because then you're sending them readers. But usually, at least what I found, they like to start the book signing because then it's drawing that interest into them too.
I'm not speaking for Ken Sanders, but Ken Sanders in Salt Lake City, I have approached them and said, hey, when this is done, this is about this local Salt Lake thing, would you be interested? And they said, oh yeah, totally, come talk to us. So yeah,
So there's not a
so you may
taboo
want to talk to them.
Yeah.
I'll be very bluntly honest. The bookstore sales for me are not enough to make it worth my time of managing the stocking of them, because 98% of my sales are ebooks, and so just the time that it takes, because it is a little time consuming making those relationships and reaching out. So for me, it's just, I don't even try because it's just not worth my time, and the money it makes doesn't equal out. So that's my brutally honest answer.
Is it the same with school visits?
Yeah, kinda. I used to do a bunch, but now I don't anymore. I need more time to do the actual writing and the actual marketing online. It just doesn't make it as much money. So, which I never charge for school visits. I know some people do. I didn't. I felt guilty doing that. So,
Yeah.
So do you think that changes by genre though?
probably. I don't write much like young adult stuff or mid-grade. And so, I have one book that's young adult, but that's it. So, and that's when I did my school visits and did stuff with that. But most of my stuff is older. So I would say it does vary by genre.
Good questions.
For me, it's the purpose of school visits. I always lose money on school visits because I take a set of my books and I leave them for the library. And I do it all for free. And it's more, I do it to inspire kids to, reach for their dreams, whether they're writers, no matter what they're going to do. My whole purpose of visiting a school is just to help the kids believe in themselves and to get that positive reinforcement they might not get in other places. I don't do many school visits, but when I do, when I leave, I'm always so much happier that I did it. So.
No, it's great. It's just not a moneymaker.
Yeah, it's definitely not a moneymaker.
Do it because you like to do it for the kids. Sorry, I sound really doubtful right now.
No, but you're right. We don't make money at school visits. And I think the hardest part of being an author, especially self-published, is the time management and saying, what is worth my time, and the sides of it. In my mind, I see school visits as, the cup refilling part of it. And so it's like this, coming here, getting refilled, getting inspired to keep writing. So it's very important that way.
And I donate my books to libraries too all the time, and I just feel like it's that's kind of a form of advertising as well.
Yes.
You get kids that their parents aren't going to buy books because they have a library 2 blocks away. So if you want them to read your books, then they need to be in the library. But then those kids are going to tell their friends about those books, and they'll tell their parents about. You know what I mean? So to
Come
me,
buy them from you.
come buy them from me in the vendor room. Yeah. So it is an investment, but it's also just, I was a library kid. My parents didn't buy me books, and Bookmobile was my friend. And so I just want to give back to that as well.
Yes.
So I have a question about, the 4 of you are up there. Yeah, I have a question, raise my hand, isn't that great? But,
I forgot.
for me, if I came in here, I may have never had any interest at all in reading, like a clean romance, But let's say that I liked what Cindy Grigg was writing. And she said, hey, you should really check out, Keary Taylor. Her books are great.
Yes.
I would be far more inclined to read your book if somebody that I knew and was reading their stuff, they recommended it. How does that play? Do you have like a local connection? Do you work with each other and kind of promote each other's books or share lists of people that you contact or information? How does that play?
I have a group of authors that I work very closely with. You'll see us in the vendor room where we get tables together and stuff. And we do that. We try to sell each other's books and, someone comes up to the table and you say, what do you like to read? And it's not what I write. And I'll say, oh, well, James Wymore has, a book just that you're going to love. So we do promote each other. We promote each other on Facebook, on Twitter. So yeah, I think that's what I love about the writing community is just that it's just this big group and it's not a competition to, if she sells a book, then that's taking a sale away from me. That's not how it feels and that's not how it is. And so yeah.
So how did you foster that? How did you start to create that type of?
With me, it was, there are probably 6 of us now in Utah that are published through Curiosity Quills. And so it started with them getting us a booth at the very first Comic-Con. And then we just, there were 3 of us then, and we just met there and just fostered this great friendship. A lot of us are now the Space Balrogs. I don't know if you guys have heard of the Space Balrogs. So yeah, come to our thing today at 1 o'clock, Choose Your Own Apocalypse. It's really fun. But anyway, so that's how that started, and then just through the Space Balrogs, other authors just started wanting to be part of our group because we're local. No, but and so the boys are cooler than I am. But that's how that started, and now we just have this huge group of authors and writers that aren't published yet, and just that we just all help each other. And we have an running email that I think I could probably get at least 5 emails a day from one of the from one or the other of them, and so it really started at conventions, and it just started with networking at places like this.
Yeah, I second what Holly said. A lot of my author friends that I kind of keep in touch with, I met at Comic-Con or doing panels with and stuff. And here, Andrea Pearson and I were on a panel last year, and since then we've helped each other with marketing ideas and things like that, and running blog tours. And so this is just a great way to network and find those people to have on your team. The neat thing about being a self-published author now is the lack of competition between authors. And I love that because when it first started, there were a lot of catty self-published authors out there who would tear down everybody else's books to bring theirs up. Now it's not like that. And I love that everyone's like, oh, I was sitting next to Michael Darling last night at the book signing, and he's so funny. And so whenever somebody was like, oh, I don't read that, and I'm like, oh, but you read that. You need to read his book. And so, and he's throwing chocolate at people. And it's a great way to kind of, the fact that we all write just a little bit different is such an asset to us. And so if we can, draw upon people writing different genres, and we can build on that too, because we all have different readerships.
I've seen meetup groups. I've seen, if you meetup.com, there's like dinner groups that you can find online and stuff. And then, but I think the conventions, from my experience, that's where, because you're here in person, you can kind of get a vibe off of people and know whether that's cool. Yeah.
All right, we have 2 minutes left. It's shameless self-promotion time, starting at the end and working your way back.
Shameless self-promotion. Okay, I guess I'll pitch this one.
Where you're headed for the rest of the day.
Huh?
If you've got other panels.
I don't have any other panels. This is my one and only, guys. You guys are special.
Enjoy it. It's good.
Yeah. Same self-promotion of this one. Take some royals, take some vampires, and plop them down in the south of Mississippi, and add in a lot of politics and a little dash of romance, and that's what you got in the House of Royals series. So people seem to be liking it. So I've been continuing on the series after I said I was going to end it. So that's my adventures.
Young Adult Urban Fantasy. I have a vendor table. Stop by, see all of the Space Balrogs books and others. And yeah, if you want to go to a really fun panel, audience participation game type panel, 1 o'clock in the amphitheater, Choose Your Own Apocalypse. We're doing literary villains. I am playing Dolores Umbridge. So it'll be me versus Moriarty versus Dracula.
Awesome.
So it will be fun.
Wear pink. Okay, so this is my 5-book space opera series. It's like Firefly meets Romeo and Juliet. So a lot of action adventure. I will be teaching in like 2 minutes. Never get writer's block over in Zion, and writing 40 books I've learned a few things about not getting writer's block.
Doing it anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
And I write steampunk, so you can get my first book for free. I have these little cards and it just has the code and you can just do a direct download of any book, any form you want. But yeah, so I write, it's Norse mythology and this is the very first book called Unworded. Today at noon I'll be writing at the panel writing steampunk, it's more than a checklist, and then at 5 I'll be Rebellion, engineering a coup. There you go.
All right, yeah. I'm Daniel Friend. I'm a freelance editor. If you need that sort of thing, come get a card from me. I'll be on panels there today as well. Thank you guys for coming. You've been great.
Thank you.